It's the Al Travis Show, and I love to get him on. We get him every other week. He's Senator Mark Koran. Senator, how are you today?
Doing very well. I'm just coming off the legislative Easter
Yeah.
break.
Yeah, happy Easter to you. That's good news, bad news. Looking at the date, you have, I don't know, 27, 28 days to get all your work done. You look pretty happy for a man on a tight deadline.
May 19th, is a constitutional deadline. So yeah, well coming back from break. It's actually a legislative break. Our staff is there for the prior 10 days, putting together all the bills that were passed right leading up to the break. And so now what you'll see is a variety of bills that were committee driven, omnibus bills. Unfortunately, will be combined in their Senate Finance, and they'll start to hit the floor this week. So I think we'll have 12, 15 bills this week, and it will be many of the large omnibus bills.
Okay, and I'll be throwing them together. But what does the number look like? What do we think the number is going to end up being? Do you have any idea? I mean, your number compared to the House number compared to the governor's number, what kind of number are we talking about? You smile.
Alan,
this is not fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still way too much spending. There's so much disagreement in the House, right, from a Republican perspective. In the Senate, they've moved on like there's nothing, and I think they called it a responsible budget to drastically continue to keep the growth in spending that they have. And as it shows today, it outpaces the revenues for the state, meaning taxes taken from citizens, by almost 2 to 1. So it's growing. The expenses are baked in that are growing twice the rate of the economy's ability to support that as it is today without any new spending.
So do we have a number on that? I'm reading somewhere $66 billion.
Yeah, it's 66, $67 billion. And those are, coming off of, a big year where they had some one-time funding the prior, and $52 billion was the last Republican, where we had a majority in the Senate budget. It's unsustainable, and it's putting a great harm onto our businesses, which are basically jobs and the health of our economy in Minnesota.
Hypothetical question for you. Let's just say in 2026, the Minnesotans get so fed up with the idea that 66 from 52 4 years ago, I'm trying to do the math, you're looking at 30-some% increase, even with the spike, and then come back down, this great savings, 30-some% increase in 4 years. Let's just pretend Minnesotans get tired of this, sir. Mm-hmm. And they voted every Republican on everything they could. Not only do you have a majority, you got the supermajority, you got this in the bag. Is there any want for us to stop talking about decreases in the increases as some sort of decrease? Could we get to a place where I say, hey, 66 billion last year, now it's 66 or 67 billion. That's an increase, not much. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Will we ever get to start talking this like normal people talk, or is it working so well that no one can keep up, so they just keep voting the same folks in?
Well, Al, I've told you, the media is designed to keep you uninformed, and or the information they withhold in total spending. That total spending, the growth in part of it is, and that's one thing I'm working on this week, is to figure out what was that growth in that federal spending in Minnesota in the last biennium of the $130 billion in Minnesota spending in that past budget. $45 billion of that was our federal money coming back. And we've seen such a drastic growth in Medicaid services. It's always about under the guise of kindness and compassion to solve some social ill. But the expansion and the lack of oversight in the administration of those programs, not only is it growing, but we've seen every level of fraud and the misuse or abuse of those funds. So when we get to the point where we just, instead of trying to stop the rate of increase in spending, which is what it is, that's not a cut. We're not cutting anything in government. Is how do you reduce that spending? Because there's two areas that are going to pull it from. In the general fund, it's education and Department of Health and Human Services. And so those are the things that fund vital services to our most needy. But at what rate? And then at what value do we get? And what should it really cost to deliver those services? And then you add the compounding factor. I think you just saw last week or over the last week, the free healthcare for illegals. So in the first
Yes.
4 months, 17,000 people. That's $600 million over a 4-year period.
See, and what gets me, sir, if I might,
yeah,
when we decided we're going to do free health care for illegals, the idea was we thought there'd be about 7,000, right? There's this, somebody throws the number out. I don't know
5,000.
why do you get to throw a number, not you?
Yeah,
Why does someone get to say, well, it's only 5,000, we can help them cost this much? And oh, wait a minute, it was 17,000. Oh, guess we just got to pay more.
yeah,
It seems like we don't, paid family leave. If you said we're going to put this much money toward paid family leave, the more they get in, the less money there is. We're going to see how this works. That would be one thing. We open these floodgates,
yep.
and we have no clue what the last dollar is going to be spent. How do you manage a budget like that? No one else does that.
And now, we foundationally, all the tools are in place to help forecast those things. They go, and not only that, from an industry perspective, lobbyists have a bad name,
Yep.
but they actually provide great business insight and analysis. We also have actuarials. They choose to ignore those things or to pass it. Free lunch, pick every single one of them. We've had so many bills that have gone through the legislature. Heck, I think at least half of them in the last biennium were passed without a fiscal note. And a fiscal note is that financial forecast from nonpartisan staff, and they just choose to ignore it. And so they don't really care. And that's the challenge we have. And that's the information the media then carries forward for the Democrat side of it.
The free lunch, you hit such a sore spot with me. You know how many children go to school. You offer free breakfast and lunch to everyone. What's the cost of lunch? Multiply by 2, lunch and breakfast, multiply kids. We should be pretty right on the nuts when it comes to what that cost was. And it's hundreds of $millions off. I don't have any idea how we could. Anyway, I got to go to break. When we come back, you are on the Department of Health and Human Services, correct?
I am.
That's going to be one of the biggies, right? I mean, they're talking, we had Hoffman on here the other day. This is where a lot of the necessarily problems is where we should be spending our money. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I also want to talk to you about the Ethics Committee coming up. We'll do it right after this on the Al Travis Show. He is Senator Mark Koran. Love having him on the program. Always tells us what's going on. Obviously, a large portion of our budget goes to Health and Human Services. You're on that committee. We're cutting it from the all-time high. Again, I got to find a better way of saying this to people. It's cutting, but are we talking such a large cut? We're hurting essential services. Things we're supposed to do.
Again, essential services, Al. Where we spend our monies.
Well, take care of our old folks who can. Take care of the mentally disabled, the handicapped. Right. Once we get past that, after that, I'm pretty good. Then we can have conversations. I want to take care of those folks.
And that's the part that frustrates most of us Republicans. It's the governor in the catbird seat. He gets to propose his cuts to those vital services, knowing that we won't stand for. We want to make sure everything is utilized properly and we get great value. But his cuts are proposed in those services, nursing homes, group homes, and those services. And so what he's going to do is negotiate some other terrible funding in some nonprofit enterprise in their favored political group, and somewhere in the metro area will get hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in lieu of taking care of the most needy. And so that's where the battle is with the billions spent in health and human services. What's a necessity, right, versus what's a want? And we've grown the wants far in excess of the necessities of taking care of our vital services for our elderly, nursing homes, group homes, and our schools too, on the other side.
Okay, how about not Alzheimer's? What was it? The autism money. Is that come out of human services? I would come off of this so hard, so fast, it's not even funny. We're going to put rules on. You actually have to have taken a class on autism, so you know what it is. You got to have a license. The amount of fraud that's going on there, but we don't even talk about it because there's so much other fraud going on in the world. How do you manage that, sir?
That goes back to my original statement. The expansion of Medicaid services, or basically billable categories that are eligible for reimbursement from Medicaid, That's what we're talking about. And that's, I can go through it. I mean, you go
Yeah.
from daycare, adult daycare, child daycare, Medicaid individual services, PCA services, Medicaid reimbursable autism services, transportation, Medicaid equipment, right? All of those things, at translation services,
Yeah.
all of those have been categories that have been expanded and with literally no oversight. And so that is a huge piece of it. And so when you see those federal dollars come by, the state grabs them up and says, oh, we've got to use it. There's no
Yeah.
limit on participation and eligibility. And that's a huge issue. So no financial constraints from that perspective. And then when you find out it goes literally unchecked, we're spending
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of dollars under guise of kindness and compassion, for which most of that money doesn't it really serve an intended purpose.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. Medicaid, that autism services, and along with that, translation services and the transportation services, all around that same expansion. It went from $6 million and a handful of providers to hundreds of providers and 200+ million a year.
But what gets me about it is it seems to me to be the same racket every time.
Yep.
Oh, I don't have to be anything particular. I'm feeding children. Oh, okay. Here, I fed 3, 6, 9,000 children. Doesn't matter. Same thing with the autism deal. Al has
Yep.
no credit in this business, but he opened up a storefront. Oh, I've got 6,000, 3,000, 5, and they just write a name, send some names in, and it gets paid. When do we start at least putting some bumps in the road to get paid, or at least know that you're doing the work, and
Yeah.
and then back to managing the money of it? I don't.
That's our whole focus in the now. And then the other piece of that is sold. You've heard the nonprofits, and there are nonprofits that do actually, well, most of our hospitals
Yeah.
are nonprofits. So in
Yeah.
just a business class, but they do good work. The problem we have to get out of, that pool is billions of dollars a year as well. That kind of is a big pot of money, and it seems to just go to a favored group, friends and family
No.
plan, and it ends up to be a political operative to feed the community with dollars and services. Yet every social ill they're targeted at has grown exponentially. I think we
Yeah.
should stop grants, and we should put them through a traditional and official procurement process. The grants, we shouldn't even have a conversation about
Yeah.
grants, and we should determine it's an actual need. Once we determine the need, estimate what that funding is, and put it through the traditional procurement channels. And it would do two things. One, we get far more controls, and you can have an open, fair, and competitive environment with a lot more transparency. And then we also can have service level agreements, which are expected outcomes. We can fire them, and
If they don't.
or when the services are working well and as intended, those businesses providing those services will actually have more stability instead of year over year begging for a particular
Yeah.
set of funding through a grant process that is kind of arbitrary and capricious. So,
One last topic, quick. If you tell us today, they're going to do an ethics committee meeting about Bobby Joe Champion, but this isn't about whether he did right or wrong in putting money into his reverend's deal. He's asking for some consideration. Can you explain this to me? I mean,
yeah.
he's asking for an opinion of some sort. It's like, well, isn't he been already put up on charges with the ethics committee? Where are we at on this today?
So when the news broke that Bobby Joe Champion, right, put in bill direct funding appropriations to his pastor, former
Yeah.
client, current client,
Yeah.
they what he did to run cover for himself is seek an advisory opinion from the ethics committee, for which he was chairing, by the way,
Yeah.
and is now stepped out. So that's what's today. And so that is the ethics committee, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and they kind of go and have a hearing about he should have, if he thought there was an issue, he should seek those things. They're always available if you're in a position where it could be deemed as a conflict.
Yeah, but don't you generally do that ahead of time, sir? You don't
No.
do it after. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
missing the point. If I'm not sure if I should have done that, will you let me know? Oh, I already did it. What difference does this make?
That's why it was to save, right? It was to try and save face and after the fact.
Okay.
But this is a long-standing tradition be him and a wide variety of other legislators in the House. You could probably find that conflict with 30+ legislators in the exact same things that either these guys work for and or provide services to these nonprofits for which they provide direct appropriations in bills that they've chief authored. In appearance, it looks like a huge conflict of interest. This is separate from the ethics complaint filed by a variety of Senate members. Michael Kroon will be leading that, and I believe I think the initial hearing is sometimes later this week. So,
all right. We are out of time, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I really do. You do go out of the way to do this, and I thank you.
yeah. Have a great day. Thanks, Al.
All right. Senator Mark Koran on the Al Travis Show. Lots more coming up. Stick around.